A silent epidemic is spreading. It does not raise a fever. It does not shake the body, but it pulls hearts apart. In just 1 year, millions of people, from Russia to America, from Europe to Turkey to Indonesia, the virus is spreading. Young people are not getting married. Even marriages of 30 years are ending. 1 divorce for every 3 marriages. This is not just a statistic. This is a global collapse. And in an authentic hadith, our Prophet ﷺ says, Shaitan set up his throne. He called his helpers and he asked, who will please me the most? Sins will be listed, but none of them will be enough, until one of them comes forward and says, I broke the bond between a husband and a wife. At that moment, Shaitan goes crazy with joy. So let us ask, is there a solution to this destruction? Is it possible to stop this pandemic spreading across the world? This video presents Islamic solutions. And yes, it can change your life. If you are married, watch it. If you are single, definitely watch it. Because heaven and hell start in your home. You are watching Religious Story TV. If you want more videos like this to reach more people, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your marriage experiences in the comments. Let us reach our brothers and sisters who are silently suffering all around the world right now. If you are ready, let's begin. According to recent data, divorce rates around the world are rising very fast, almost wildly. China is at the top with about 3.5 million divorces. The United States follows with close to 1 million divorces. Russia has one of the highest divorce rates compared to its population, with around 650,000 divorces. When we look at Muslim-majority countries with large populations, Indonesia has around 400,000 divorces, Egypt around 250,000, and Turkey close to 200,000. In Pakistan and Bangladesh, because of cultural structure, official divorce rates remain very low, under 1 per 1,000. However, in countries like Saudi Arabia, when laws changed, the number of divorces suddenly jumped to around 70,000. For every 3 marriages, there is 1 divorce. Many of these marriages end before even 1 year is completed. There are also couples who live together for 10 years, but turn life into misery for each other. And of course, they do not appear in these statistics. At this point, there is a very strong and authentic hadith of our Prophet mentioned in Abu Muslim. It is narrated from Jabir that Rasulullah said, Indeed, Iblis places his throne upon water. Then he sends his soldiers to people to create fitna. The closest to him in rank is the one who creates the greatest fitna. One of them comes and says, I did this and that. Iblis says, you did nothing. Then another comes and says, I did not leave him until I separated the husband and wife. Then Iblis brings that helper close to himself and says, how good you are. So why does it make Shaitan so happy when spouses become enemies and even when a marriage is destroyed? Because a husband and wife are not just 2 people. Generations will come from them. That home will be the place where the next generation is raised and shaped. Turning husband and wife into enemies is equal to attacking the core of society. In Islam, that home is the core of the Akhirah. If that home turns into a hell, it opens the doors to a much bigger hell outside for people. Is this not what we are seeing today? In fact, with the effect of modern life, another deep and shocking destruction is happening. Marriage rates are falling at a speed never seen in history. Young people are now avoiding saying yes to marriage. Even countries once known for high birth rates, such as Indonesia, Saudi Arabia, and Bangladesh, cannot resist this modern wave and are shrinking their family structures. The foundation of a marriage depends on 2 things: hope and forget. The first rule is hope. Think about what the Sahaba went through. Remember the hardships of Allah Rasulu alayhi salam. When you remember these, Keep this hope alive in your heart. Yes, because of tests, some negative things will happen, but after that, Allah will bring us to good things. This hope should be carried throughout life in every matter. The second rule is forget. Even after 20 years, a mistake that was made can still turn into an argument and continue again and again. The issue is never solved. What good does it do to keep scratching the same wound other than disturbing the peace of the home? Do you know what our Prophet used to say? If he is human, he makes mistakes. He went through many hardships in his life and always said this sentence. For example, Hatib bin Abi Balta sent news to Makkah before the conquest, hidden in a woman's hair, saying, "The Muslims are coming, prepare yourselves." This could have started a great war. Today, this would be considered a very serious betrayal. So what did our Prophet do? He said, "Hatib loves Allah and His Messenger," and he forgave him. He did not say, "Did you also wrong me?" What did he say? If he is human, such things happen. Another example, the incident of Ifk. When Ibn Selul slandered our mother Aisha, 3 respected Sahaba were slightly involved in spreading this slander. One of them was Hassan bin Sabit, the person about whom our Prophet said, "Jibril is with your tongue." So what happened? Did he say, "Did you also wrong me?" No, he forgave them. Now we come to the main issue, a common mistake in arguments between spouses, picking some information with tweezers and using it as a weapon against the spouse. Most of it is hearsay. The goal is simple. You hurt me, so I will hurt you back. Here another important concept of marriage appears, unsiyah, deep intimacy. There is a narration that the word human comes from the root uns. Uns means getting used to someone, becoming close, feeling warmth and familiarity. The place where one human should feel the strongest unsiyah with another human is marriage. This is because marriage is the place of the closest contact, sitting at the same table, sleeping in the same room, and walking the same life together. If people live this closely and unsiyah does not form, then there is a very serious danger. The opposite of unsiyah is becoming wild and distant. This means losing softness and mercy. Claws come out. The home stops being a place of safety and turns into a place of struggle. A person does not want to go home. Before opening the door, they feel pressure in their chest. At that moment, the home is no longer a peaceful place. It becomes a battlefield. This description is heavy, but sometimes the truth is heavy. Now we come to a very critical point. Please pay close attention. The stronger the reason for marriage, the stronger the marriage itself. This is a law of Allah. If the reason for marriage is money or wealth, once it is achieved, it loses its value. If the reason for marriage is physical beauty, that beauty will fade with time. Even before it fades, it becomes normal and loses its impact. When the reason disappears, the marriage becomes weak or collapses. But if the reason is the riza of Allah, then a foundation is built that is very hard to destroy. The riza of Allah is not temporary. That is why it is said, if the reason is the riza of Allah, even if Qiyamah comes, the marriage will not collapse. The main message here is this: a person should not walk by trusting emotions, but by trusting intention. Emotions rise and fall, but when intention stays strong, the relationship can be repaired again. The stronger the reason for love, the stronger the result, which is marriage. Why? Because in the reason for love, there is something called consideration. A person can host someone they do not even know. Why? Because there is a shared friend, and the consideration of that friend comes into play. Not for the person himself, but for the sake of that friend. So in marriage, whose consideration matters? If it is the consideration of Allah, it is not easy to break it, because the consideration of Allah does not end. Human consideration ends. People get hurt, tired and exhausted, but a marriage that places the consideration of Allah at its center becomes more durable. In this matter, a very strong hadith is remembered. You will not enter Jannah until you have Iman, and you will not truly have Iman until you truly love one another. Here, love is not described as a simple emotional warmth. It is understood from a deeper level. When someone rejects the command of the one who orders love, the claim of Iman is damaged. When you say, "I do not love you," you are not only turning away from a person, but also opposing the one who gave that command and created the person you refuse to love. Because of this, it is understood that Allah placed His Riza between the Riza of His servants. And here, the real test of love becomes clear. Loving someone because of good qualities is easy. Anyone can love a kind, smiling, generous person. This is not the real test. The real test is being able to love even when some traits are difficult, even when the other person causes hardship for the sake of the Riza of Allah. At that point, love stops being only an emotion and becomes an act of ibadah. A person, without noticing, sets the relationship with the one next to them like the length of a journey. As long as the journey feels long, the relationship becomes deep. If the journey feels short, the relationship stays shallow. This truth appears even in daily life. For example, you get on a city bus and you will get off in 10 minutes. Do you have a long conversation with the person next to you? No. Maybe a greeting, maybe a short glance. That is all. Because the journey is short, the relationship is short. But when the journey is longer, the situation changes. You sit next to the same person for hours. Without trying, a few words are spoken. A sentence, a question, a smile. As the road becomes longer, the relationship also becomes longer. Because a person builds connection according to how long they feel they will walk together. One of the biggest mistakes in marriage starts here. If you see life with your spouse as a short worldly life, then the bond between you becomes like that. Shallow, fragile. Emotions become artificial. The feeling of "it is temporary anyway" settles deep in the heart. And without realizing it, a person starts to live marriage like a temporary stop. But think of the journey as endless, a togetherness that goes to Akhirah. Then the relationship suddenly takes a different form, because the matter is no longer only today or tomorrow, but eternity. At that point, love stops being a temporary excitement and turns into a lasting bond. That is why a serious warning is given to those who come together only for youth and beauty. Youth will end one day, beauty too. When that journey ends, if the foundation was built only on that, the marriage will collapse. This is unavoidable. That is why, inside the home, it should often be remembered that this journey is a road leading to Akhirah. Not only with words, but by living it. How does this happen? By salah being established in the home, by speaking about Akhirah, by keeping alive the idea of walking side by side in eternity. And for this, lessons of Iman must find a place not only in the ear, but in life. Now let us enter a deep matter about marriage mentioned in the Risale-i-Nur. The key word is kufu, meaning suitability and equality. The strong bond, love and connection between a woman and a man do not come only from the needs of worldly life. It is not limited to "let us live together and share life." The word love here comes from the root haba, meaning seed. Love is planted like a seed. But a seed does not grow by itself. It needs water, it needs care, it needs time, attention, and patience. Otherwise, it dries. The word connection is also not used without reason. Connection means two sides feeding each other. Love is not one-sided, it is mutual nourishment. When one gives, the other receives, then gives back. Here comes a very strong statement. A woman is not only a life companion for her husband in this world, she is also a refika al-hayat, in eternal life. This sentence moves marriage to a completely different level. The Arabic word zawj is explained. Zawj means one shoe of a pair. Can you walk with only one shoe? No, it loses its meaning. Only when both are together does it work. Spouses are like this. They gain meaning together. After zawj and zawja, there is a higher level, rafika. Rafika means companion on the road. Walking in the same direction, looking at the same goal, getting tired on the same path. There is an even higher level, killer. At this point, unity forms in feelings and thoughts. The spouse becomes not only a spouse, but a soul friend. In such a togetherness, a very sensitive issue comes forward, the issue of gaze. If this togetherness goes to eternity, then things that can harm this journey must be avoided. Behaviors that cause jealousy can fall into the home like dynamite. Jealousy is a natural feeling. It exists in both men and women. The issue is not to provoke this feeling, but to protect it. Then, a very important point is emphasized. The love of a believing husband for his wife is not only based on physical beauty. Physical pleasure is momentary. Without touch, sight, and contact, it gives no pleasure. When beauty fades, that pleasure also fades. But the love of the soul is beyond time. It covers the past and the future. The soul can remember a moment from years ago and still feel joy today. This is the love most needed in old age. When young, everyone is loved. When beautiful, everyone is loved. But when aging comes, when the back bends, when abilities decrease, then the soul must love the soul. If this foundation is not built in youth, love cannot be found in old age. And love that is not found in old age cannot be carried to Akhirah. At this point, it is explained how love centered only on the body collapses. People begin to say words they should never say to each other. Respect disappears. That is why the word respect is especially emphasized. Respect is a spiritual level. As the beauty of the soul increases, respect also increases, and the path to this passes through taqwa. Here, a peak example is remembered, Rabia al-Adawiyah. When taqwa and respect are mentioned, she comes to mind. Because true respect does not come from outward appearance, but from inner depth. Since the spouse is an eternal companion and friend, then a woman or a man should not attract the nazar of others to themselves. Because when one person makes the other jealous, it creates problems on the journey that goes to Akhirah. Jealousy exists in the nature of women, and it also exists in men. This is natural. For this reason, it is far better for a woman not to present her beauty to anyone other than her husband. Otherwise, jealousy can enter the home like dynamite and destroy peace. In the same way, a man should not look at other women, which is already haram for a Muslim man. A woman can receive true respect from her husband only when her spiritual beauty increases. For this, she must reach taqwa. Where respect is lost, love also withdraws. In marriage, there are some words that make a person feel cold inside when they hear them, because those words show how far a home has fallen. Humiliating sentences, belittling looks, two people saying to each other words that even a child would never say. Have you ever thought about how a marriage reaches this point? The answer is painful but clear. The reason is the body. If a relationship is built only on the body, then when the body ages, everything ages. The heart ages, patience ages, tolerance ages. Since the beauty of the soul was never considered, there is nothing left to hold on to. At that point, the marriage also becomes old, and a person can start looking at the one they once called "my dear" as an enemy. Here, special attention is given to the Arabic word hurma, which means inner respect. This respect is the insurance of marriage. Love may decrease at times, love may get tired, But if there is respect, a person does not cross the line. If there is respect, the tongue holds back. If there is respect, the heart applies brakes. If respect is lost, love is consumed very quickly. Real and true love and respect appear when youth is gone, strength is gone, and beauty decreases. That is when a person sees the truth. At that time, a person wants to be loved, because the world has already turned its back, and many loved ones may have already left this world. But a marriage that did not nourish the soul in youth and focused only on the body cannot give this love in old age, because there is no foundation. The love of the soul is different. The soul is independent of time. It can remember a memory from the past and still feel joy today. The taste of a tea drunk together can still be felt in the heart years later. This is the love that keeps people standing in old age, the soul loving the soul. Those who do not build this foundation in youth face a great emptiness in old age. And sadly, this emptiness does not stay only in this world. It is carried to Akhira as well. Sometimes people hear divorce news from people in their 50s or 60s. When asked, "What happened?" the answer is striking. "I no longer have the old feelings for them. I lost all interest and desire." This sentence explains everything. The souls were never truly connected. Respect was never planted. Love never reached the level of the soul. A relationship that walked only on the body for years eventually collapses completely. Because of this, Said Nursi gives a very strong and clear warning. He speaks about idol worship and a similar form called image worship. This means becoming attached to physical appearance and beauty as if worshipping it. The Quran rejects this clearly because a relationship centered on beauty cuts a person off from truth. From here, a very important lesson appears. Choosing a spouse by asking only, "Is she beautiful?" or "Is he handsome?" can be a sign of a great future loss. The real question should be, can this person connect with my soul? This is what keeps a person beside you in hard times and what prevents them from leaving when old age comes. Then a very sensitive issue is addressed, tesetur. A woman dedicating her beauty only to her husband is not just a matter of clothing. It is a very deep issue related to protecting marriage. Behaviors that cause jealousy quietly bring fitna into the home. The woman is harmed, the man is harmed, the child is harmed, the family home is harmed. Tesetur is not only a personal act of ibadah, it is a shield that protects the family. Besides being fard, it has a very strong role in marital happiness. Many people do not realize this while they have it, but they understand it when it is lost. At this point, a very clear hadith is remembered. A woman is married for 4 things: her wealth, her lineage, her beauty, and her religion. But the Prophet especially says, choose the religious one so that you may be happy. This does not mean that the other 3 have no value at all, but it clearly shows this. If religion is missing, even if the other qualities are at the highest level, the marriage shakes. Because there is no harmony of the soul, there is no akhira goal. The foundation is incomplete. Marriage is not just 2 people coming together, it is the joining of 2 paths, 2 directions, and 2 ways of seeing life. If these directions are opposite, when the road becomes long, collision becomes unavoidable. Religious commitment is the insurance of marriage. If the other 3 exist, but this one does not, it is like placing a time bomb inside the home. At first, everything looks fine. There is beauty, comfort, status. But as time passes, the bomb starts ticking, and one day, it explodes. Look around. Hundreds and thousands of people exhaust themselves for beauty because they believe this is how they will be liked and accepted. This is no longer an exception. It has almost become the rule, because the foundation was built wrongly. Without harmony of the soul, without iman sensitivity, marriage is built only on outward reasons cannot last long. That is why anxiety about youth and beauty has increased so much today. But if the foundation of religion exists, everything does not need to be perfect. Sometimes matching frequency is enough. Sometimes physical attraction also exists. We are not saying physical attraction should not exist, but the main axis is clear. Can we carry each other to Akhirah? If this question does not exist, the other questions lose much of their meaning. There is also a very risky idea spreading among Muslim people, a sentence many people repeat: I will marry this person, then I will make them religious. This sounds innocent, but it is actually very dangerous. A religious man says, after marriage, I will make her cover. A religious woman says, after marriage, I will get him used to Salah. Someone else says, I will send him to Jumu'ah. But marriage is not an experiment table. No one's Akhirah can be left to the hope of maybe they will change. Because most of the time, what happens is the opposite. Change does not happen. One person pulls the other down. A woman who practices tesettür may end up in a life surrounded by alcohol and gambling. A man who knows the path of Allah may be drained by living with a woman who has no limits and emotional balance. That home quietly turns into ruin. That is why the idea, I will make them religious later, is clearly described as very risky. The warning in the Hadith points exactly to this. Choose the religious one, meaning from the beginning. Another wrong expectation comes from families. Parents sometimes say about their children, they will improve after marriage. This sentence is also not innocent. One should ask, if you could not fix this for years, will a stranger fix it? Is that man or woman a testing ground? This view treats marriage like a correction center. But marriage is a path walked by two already mature people. It is companionship, not training. Often the opposite happens. The married person becomes more careless, thinking, I already achieved something. The burden falls on the other spouse, and the balance of the home breaks. Now let us move to another extreme. This time, the claims of those who cannot marry. I have not been able to marry for years because I could not find someone who fits my standards. What are these standards? Often an unrealistic ideal, as if someone will come straight from Jannah, perfect, meeting every expectation at once. But in this world, imperfection is part of destiny. 60 to 70% compatibility is actually a great success in this age. In a time where there is one divorce for every 3 marriages, this is not something small. You are looking for 100% compatibility, but even if you find it today, will you not think differently tomorrow? Over time, you will change, and compatibility will shift again. Even a person is not fully consistent within themselves. Someone can say A now and B 1 hour later. When a person is not even fully consistent with themselves, expecting perfect consistency from another person is unfair and does not suit a Muslim. They list criteria as if thousands of options are waiting at the door. Blue eyes, Hafiz, also studying knowledge, always gaining rewards, charismatic, commanding, well-spoken, good-smelling, rich. Who are you describing? Someone like Prophet Sulaiman? Even he probably did not have blue eyes. This expectation does not match reality, because tests come from a person's weakest point. A very organized person may be given a very relaxed spouse. Someone who loves food may be given a spouse weak in cooking. Allah tests, because marriage is not only a place of comfort, it is a place of ibadah. Sometimes spouses donate organs to each other, yet argue over a shirt. This is the strange but real face of marriage. And here, a very striking question is asked. Without the consideration of Allah, is this road bearable? Everyone answers this question within themselves. Where show and display begin, blessing leaves. When this topic is discussed, a striking example is given, the wedding of Fatima. People in the streets of Medina said, We have never seen a more beautiful wedding than hers. Why? Because there was no riya, there was no show, nothing was done for people. There was ikhlas, simplicity, and nikah. And nikah is such a contract that it does not concern only people. It even concerns the arsh. It is not an ordinary agreement. But many people today love display and live with the question, what will others say? This question sits at the center of marriages like an unseen idol. Even though a person knows they will give account to Allah, they focus more on giving account to neighbors, relatives, and acquaintances. This focus breaks the direction of marriage from the very beginning. My friend got married in such a beautiful way. They did it there, so I want this luxury place too. This sentence is often presented not as a choice, but as a necessity, as if marriage must be run not by divine measure, but by family customs. Then expenses begin, debts grow. When debt is not enough, riba stands at the door. Before the ink of the nikah even dries, a heavy burden is placed on the shoulders, and with this burden, people try to walk a peaceful marriage. But think about it. How much love can remain in a house under debt pressure? A person cannot even drink a cup of tea in peace because the mind is always somewhere else. How will I pay this debt? At this point, marriage starts to wear out from its very first days because barakah does not stay in the same place as debt and show. Exactly here, the wedding of Fatima is remembered again. People talked about her wedding in Medina, but what did they talk about? Not the dress, not the hall, not the food. They said, "We have never seen a more beautiful wedding than Fatima's." There was no display, no concern about what people would say. There was ikhlas and simplicity. There was a nikah done only for Allah. That is why it was beautiful. Because sometimes beauty is not hidden in lights, but in intention. The essence of a wedding is nikah, and nikah is not a simple signature. It is a contract done on earth, but connected to the heavens. When nikah is lost in the noise of the wedding, marriage also loses its direction. While people try to announce it, they forget its essence. Then a very sensitive issue appears. The sentence, "What will happen in one day?" This sentence has shaped the fate of many marriages. I uncovered for one day. It was like this just for one day. But the test is exactly that day, because that day does not return. There is no repair. Sometimes one day changes the direction of an entire life. Even more painful is leaving salah on that day. There is no salah on the wedding day, as if there is an exemption for that day. But in Islam, after Iman, the most important matter is salah. Salah is the center of life. If there is no salah on one of the most important days of life, a person should ask, around which center will this marriage turn? Another trap of modern life is pointed out here: imitation, series, movies, social media. Without noticing, people take someone else's life as the measure of their own. I will be like that. I will do it this way. Then they disconnect from their own values. Marriage gets damaged while trying to copy another life, because imitation does not produce identity. It wears identity away. It is not blamed for a Muslim to have beautiful things. On the contrary, being happy for a brother's blessing is a virtue. The issue is when that beauty enters the heart. If wealth, property, and display sit on the throne of the heart, the problem begins. Because when something grows in the heart, it pushes something else out. And often, what gets pushed out is barakah. Barakah does not fit into mathematics. A person may have bags full of money, but no peace at home. The table is full, but the heart is empty. Because barakah does not come only with income. It comes with intention, gratitude, and measure. From here, marriage moves into a wider area of responsibility, children and lineage. Here, a person faces a hard truth. Even if the child comes from you, the child does not belong to you. Your spouse is also not your property. Each of them is a trust. A child is first the servant of Allah. You are responsible not to raise the child according to your own desires, but according to what Allah wants. When this awareness is lost, the balance inside the home is also lost. As a result of this neglect, barakah leaves the house. Peace decreases, arguments increase, small issues grow bigger. Because when barakah leaves, even small things feel heavy. Marriage is not a competition. It is not a race to defeat one another. It is a journey of carrying each other to akhirah. When this perspective changes, the language of marriage also changes. The blaming language disappears. In its place comes the language of "let us be saved together." Because the issue is no longer being right. The issue is not losing the eternal companion. Here, a very important question is raised. What happens if a religious person dies before getting married? This question sometimes falls into the heart like sadness, but the answer is full of hope. What is not completed in this world is not left incomplete in akhirah. The Quran clearly gives this news. There is no loneliness in Jannah. Whoever deserves it is not left alone. At this point, the siege of Khaybar is remembered. A man named Aslam, an Abyssinian slave. During the siege, he comes, believes, and becomes a believer. Before even finding time to perform salah, he is martyred. Think about it. No single prayer, no long life of worship. But there is iman, there is sincerity, and the good news is this: he entered Jannah without deeds, and he was married there. This narration shakes the heart because it teaches us this: Allah looks at intention, Allah looks at sincerity, and Allah does not leave it without reward. A verse from Surah Baqarah is remembered: they will have purified spouses there, and they will remain there forever. Here there is a very fine explanation. The phrase purified spouses, if only her were meant, this wording would not be used, because her do not need purification. This shows that there is a sign here. Worldly spouses will be reunited in Jannah after being purified. What does this mean? Spouses who were patient in this world, who carried each other for Allah, will turn into the greatest reward in akhirah. At this point, a person stops and thinks, who will I enjoy being with the most in eternal life? The her or the spouse with whom I cried, endured, and grew tired together in this world? And a clear answer comes: my spouse. Because shared pain, shared joy, and shared patience deepen love many times over. When the akhirah side of marriage is spoken about, a person's words slow down, because the issue is no longer "let us get along well." The issue is arriving purified. All the hardships lived together, patience, hurt feelings, sacrifices, none of them are wasted. But on one condition: the intention must be correct. The phrase purified spouses in Surah Baqarah is the heart of this section. At first glance, it looks simple, but when you go deeper, it points to the final goal of marriage. Being pure does not only mean being sinless, it means being purified. Purified through patience, through forgiveness, through letting go, through silence, through swallowing pain, sometimes through tears. In this world, spouses sometimes tire each other, sometimes hurt each other, sometimes break each other. But if there is iman, these wounds do not produce hatred, they produce purification. Because every wound, when carried with patience, lightens the soul, and a lighter soul reaches a heavier reward in akhirah. Here, a very fine balance is explained. Not every problem in marriage is oppression. Some are tests. The difference between oppression and test is hidden in intention. If a hardship is carried for Allah, it turns into ibadah. But if the same hardship is carried to prove oneself right, it darkens the heart. That is why the text keeps returning to the same question: for whom did you endure? For whom did you remain silent? For whom did you give up? If the answer is Allah, then nothing lived is wasted. Problems not solved in this world are solved in akhirah. Words that could not be said here find meaning there, and the spouse who looked like a burden here becomes the greatest blessing there. Here, another dimension of marriage opens, purifying each other. A person is tested alone, but the test in marriage is stronger because the spouse is very close. They see your weakest moments and your hardest sides. This closeness reveals flaws, and when flaws appear, there are two paths. You either escape or you accept purification. Escaping in marriage is easy. You say, "I cannot do this." You say, "This is who I am." But purification is hard, because purification requires the ego to be shaped. The marriages that are carried to Akhirah are the ones that pass through this shaping. Not the smooth ones, but the ones that endure with their rough edges. Everything you live with your spouse in this world prepares you for the meeting in Akhirah. Patience purifies you. Forgiveness lightens you. Respect elevates you. This purification process is often silent. No one applauds, no one notices, but Allah sees. Rafika is not only a travel companion, it is the one who shares the load, the one who lifts you when you fall, the one who carries you when you are tired. Sometimes with a look, sometimes with silence. Such a togetherness does not break in Akhirah. At this point, a person naturally asks themselves, do I see my spouse as a project to be fixed, or as a companion with whom I am purified? Projects are abandoned when they fail, but companions are not left until the road ends. Reading marriage only through taking destroys it. What am I getting? What is given to me? This mindset consumes marriage. A marriage centered on Iman walks with a different question: what am I giving? And interestingly, the one who gives begins to gain. Because in marriage, gain does not come through calculation, but through sacrifice. Marriage is not only living in the same house, it is meeting at the same character, the same patience, the same goal, the same prayer. After a certain point in marriage, a person's language changes without noticing it. When saying my spouse, the tone becomes different. When saying my child, the look changes. And exactly here, there is a very critical distinction. Do you see them as a burden or as a trust? Because what is seen as a burden crushes a person while being carried. But what is seen as a trust makes a person careful, sensitive, and responsible. Many crises in marriage are born from losing this distinction. You do not even belong to yourself. Your spouse does not belong to you. Your child belongs to you the least. This sentence sounds heavy to the modern mind, because modern thinking wants to own, to control, to manage. But in an Iman-centered view, there is no ownership, only amana. Your spouse is an amana given to you by Allah. Your child is a servant of Allah entrusted to you. And a person who lives with amana awareness cannot behave roughly. When amana awareness is lost in marriage, the language becomes harsh. A person crosses limits because they think the other belongs to them. But someone who knows amana does not shout at it, insult it, or break it, because they know the account will be given not only to the spouse, but to the owner of the trust. Here, the issue of children becomes deeper. Raising children, lineage. Many times, parents want to shape the child according to their own ideals. They want the child to do what they could not do. They want to complete their own lack through the child. But this turns the child into a project. A child is not a project. A child is a servant of Allah first, then your child. When this awareness is lost, barakah leaves the house, because barakah comes with respect shown to amana. When trust is treated lightly, mercy withdraws. Arguments increase, small issues grow, voices rise, hearts harden. Because Allah is no longer at the center, barakah breaks mathematics. Sometimes income is small, yet it is enough. Sometimes income is large, yet it is never enough, because barakah is not measured by numbers. Barakah is the satisfaction of the soul. When the soul is not satisfied, even a full table feels empty. Here comes a striking sentence. A man has sacks full of money, but he lives hungry in that house. Why? Because the soul is hungry. And the food of the soul cannot be bought with money. The food of the soul comes with iman, shukr, and balance. A happy husband is one who looks at his wife's religious practice and grows with it. A happy woman is one who looks at her husband's religious practice and rises with him. There is a very fine balance here. Spouses do not control each other, compete with each other, or belittle each other. They lift each other up, because the goal is the same, the eternal journey. When spouses meet at this goal, small flaws do not grow. Even big tests become bearable. But when the goal is lost, marriage becomes heavy. Questions like, "Why did I marry?" increase. Only if sentences multiply, people start living like strangers in the same house, because amana awareness is gone and consumption has taken its place. A person consumes the spouse, consumes the child, and finally consumes themselves. Here, a very strong truth is reminded again. Marriage is not a comfort project. Marriage is an ibadah field, and ibadah is not always easy. It makes a person sweat. It challenges. It requires patience, but in the end, it brings peace. A person who sees marriage as ibadah does not read difficulties as, "Why did this happen to me?" They read it as, "What am I learning from this?" This perspective matures a person. What you place at the beginning, you find at the end. Most people do not think about the end when speaking about marriage, because the human mind is locked to today. Am I happy today? Am I comfortable today? Am I understood today? But marriage is a journey whose end is hidden in its beginning. If you want to know what you will meet at the end, look at what you placed at the beginning. A marriage that starts with iman may stumble, but it does not collapse, because when it falls, it has something to hold on to. That support is Allah. But a marriage that starts with display, expectations, what will people say, and body-centered desires collapses in the first storm, because it has no roots. Let us remember the number mentioned at the beginning: 1 divorce for every 3 marriages. These numbers are not just statistics. They are the sum of wrong beginnings, wrong intentions, wrong expectations, wrong centers. Now the real question must be asked, what did we think marriage was? A project to make each other happy? A comfort zone? A tool to complete our own lacks? Marriage is actually a test field. In marriage, a person faces themselves the most. They see their impatience, their selfishness, their need to control. If there is iman, this confrontation grows the person. So let us ask again, is Allah at the center or not? If Allah is not at the center, love gets consumed, respect disappears, hope fades, patience feels heavy, forgiveness becomes impossible. But if Allah is at the center, love may get tired, but it does not end. Respect protects the line, hope lives until the last breath. Patience gains meaning. Forgiveness becomes ibadah. So the main issue in marriage is not who is right. The main issue is for whom it is lived. A person who always tries to be right at home usually loses something. Sometimes peace, sometimes the spouse, sometimes the child. But a person who can remain silent for Allah, who can step back for Allah, who can sacrifice for Allah, without noticing gains a lot. Now let us bring all the pieces together. Marriage, hope, forget respect, religious practice, kufu amana awareness, baraka akhira goal. These are not separate topics. They all turn around one thing, an iman-centered life. Marriage can be a road that strengthens iman, but the same marriage can also turn into a wheel that consumes iman. This depends entirely on intention and perspective. Your spouse can be your Jannah or your Jahannam. Which one it becomes depends not so much on who they are, but on what you place at the center. The final sentence is the essence of everything said from the beginning. If you read marriage as something only for this world, the burden feels heavy. But if you read marriage as a journey extending to Akhirah, the same burden turns into ibadah. And at the end of this reflection, a person cannot avoid asking themselves, what did I build my marriage on? What road am I walking with my spouse? Does this road end here, or does it extend to eternity? Because the scene you will meet at the end of the road is hidden in your answers to these questions.